Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. You deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. And here is a little video about what we do in the cannabis space as nurses, and then we're going to get into our very exciting show today.
The paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
Oh, there you go. Green Nurse, living your best life. Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Mack, and I'm Vice President of Nursing, co-founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. I'm a cannabis nurse, patient, advocate, activist, and a very passionate podcaster here to change the paradigm of healthcare. And I'm really excited to announce that this is my 7th year podcasting, The Green Nurse, Living Your Best Life. I started podcasting in 2018 when the National Council State Boards of Nursing, which is the nursing regulatory board that tests all nurses to get their exams, they came out with their guidelines that all nurses must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. I started podcasting to share compelling stories of healing, to decrease stigma, since I too use cannabis as medicine. So before we get started on our very, very exciting show today, I have a message from our sponsors at Bloom Hemp. And of course, I have to share all about Bloom. Bloom is a woman and nurse-owned CBD company leading with quality, safety, value, and patient-centered care. Bloom Hemp products are USDA organic CBD, grown in the mountains of Colorado, and tested for purity, potency, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line, 970-404-HOPE, to answer any questions on cannabis and CBD and how it works in the body. And then they also offer a coupon code Green Nurse for 10% off and free shipping. Thank you to Bloom Hemp for supporting us on our show here today. So cannabis nursing has been recognized as a specialty, and nurses are truly making an impact on advocating for the safe therapeutic use of cannabis. And today we have a remarkable guest on who will be sharing his compelling story of healing and the challenges he faced living in a prohibition state and his late wife, Shelly Brewer's story. So Captain Jason Straw is a retired member of the United States Air Force, Corp. He boasts a very distinguished career spanning over 17 years in the Army and the United States Air Force, with 2 impactful tours in Afghanistan. During his service, he excelled as an ICU, intensive care unit charge nurse, and infection control officer at Craig Joint Theater Hospital, Bagram Air Force Base, delivering compassionate care to more than 600 medical and multi-system trauma patients. Additionally, he demonstrated exceptional skills as a critical Air Force air transport nurse, specializing in transporting high acuity patients from remote locations to advanced care facilities. So just think of a nurse in the air that's like a paramedic, right? With a wealth of experience exceeding 18 years, Captain Jason Straw has honed his expertise in various nursing disciplines, including critical care, bone marrow transplant, infection control, when this is very, very impressive, maintaining an impressive 2.79% infection rate during combat, and that's surpassing the 4% national average. Wound care hyperbaric treatments, performing 54 dives, surgical nursing, home health care, education, instruction, and specialized knowledge in cannabinoid nursing. He has many, many, many achievements. He's earned 3 degrees, associate's degree in liberal arts in 2000, bachelor's in general science and mathematics in 2002, and bachelor's in nursing in 2004. He held the position of chair at Indiana Normal, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, from October 2021 to October 2022. He was honored with the Indiana Top Cannabis Advocate Award in 2020 by Glass Mule. National recognition in Scrubs Magazine and Nurses on Board's Coalition for Military Service and Cannabis Advocacy in February of 2020. He presented a medical cannabis policy to the Indiana State Nursing Association in January of 2020. He was featured in the 2019 documentary Magic Molecule for contributions to Indiana Normal. He's also served as a cardiopulmonary nurse consultant at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Hospital from 2010 to 2014. He also acted as the United States Air Force CCAT International Liaison for Australian Deputy Surgeon General under the United States Air Force Surgeon General Lieutenant General Charles B. Green in October of 2012. He developed and implemented a nursing upgrade training course for all 135 Grant Medical Center inpatient nurses in 2008. He has many, many certifications in cannabis in nursing, and we're delighted to have him on a show again to share his cannabis journey and that of his late wife, Shelly Brewer, also known as the Hempin Nurse. Welcome, Jason. It's a pleasure to have you on. It's been a while. I'm so grateful to have you here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I love your show. Shelly watched you every morning that you were on when she was down in the flower room.
In the flower room, cutting the flowers, trimming and tending to the garden, right? That's the flower room we're talking about?
Yeah, it was her bliss space.
Oh, it is many, many, many people's bliss space when you get around those plants. I mean, just the terpenes in itself and the aromatic compounds and the healing potential that it imparts, just starting with just the smell, is really, really powerful. So Jason, welcome to the show. For our new viewers that don't know you, what is your background in medical cannabis advocacy for cannabis?
Well, I started with a patient advocating for them at the State House in Indiana in 2016. It took me about 6 months to feel comfortable to step forward. As a retired military nurse, I knew I had to be on my toes if I went before the government to advocate for somebody. But this child was in dire straits. He had 6 to 10 months to live. Back in 2016. He's still alive on cannabis meds, and we were able to successfully pass Senate Bill 52, which legalized all hemp products in Indiana. Which from there, then I got into Hoosier Vets for Medical Cannabis, Indiana Normal. There was a chronic pancreatic pain organization that I advised. I advised the Disability Party on Cannabis policies. So it just kind of kept spiraling. I kept doing more and more after that. And I started the grassroots movement in Indiana, which is still, it got shut down during COVID. The government just said no more meetings publicly.
Yeah. So you don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be a cannabis nurse. Hey, this is what I want to do. You were led into it by helping someone else.
Yes. Yeah. It was compassion. I couldn't stand by and see somebody suffer.
Yeah. So having lived in a prohibition state as a medical cannabis patient, what challenges have you encountered?
Well, I'll go back to my mother's. She had stage 4 breast cancer back in the 90s, and she died in 97. She actually was unable to use the investigative new drug program because her husband was a federal employee, and the drug testing stood in the way because they said he wouldn't be protected if she smoked and he popped hot. So she went and used Marinol, which is synthetic THC. It helps. Shelly enjoyed it. But she used a lot of other cannabinoids, which balanced it out and made it more effective. And that's something that we've learned. My journey personally started, I started suffering from GI issues and trauma issues back in the 90s when I was an airborne paratrooper medic. And once I learned about cannabis with this one patient, I could see how it could help me. When I got out of the Air Force, I had migraines and they're a type of seizure. So when when hemp became legal in Indiana, I tried CBD and it helped. I went from 20 migraines a month. The VA got me down to about 12 with their pharmaceutical regimen, but they said I failed because I was unable to hold down a job successfully with that many migraines. When I got onto hemp and added some other supplements and herbs, I got down to 6 a month. So I went from 20, pharmaceutical was 12, adding cannabis on, I was able to get, with hemp, I was able to decrease the side effects of the meds and get down to 6 a month. Now I went out west for a month. I got off all my meds. Wow. And I used...
You came out west? Did you come out to California?
Colorado. So Oregon, Washington, I traveled around there and I got off my meds. Cannabis just made me feel normal. I couldn't believe it. So when I went back to Indiana, because it's not legal there, I got off. I went back on the hemp CBD. I took my VA medications and I went and testified and they said, well, do you use marijuana? And I said, no. They said, well, you don't know anything then. I said, well, I got off all my meds when I was outside of Indiana for a month in the legal states. I said, so I do understand how it works for me, and it does work. I understand the feeling. I'm very sensitive to THC. I get high very quick. 2 or 3 milligrams could knock me out and put me to sleep. I slept great. I had problems sleeping too. I think there's 13 health conditions that the VA identified when I was medically retired, connected to my service. And I also had chronic kidney disease. I was going into stage 4. When Shelly met me, I was already stabilizing and getting a little better, but the medical marijuana kind of tipped me over the edge. And the last time I went to the VA, I was 2 points below the normal range. The time before that, I was with just over the normal range. So I'm sitting right there where stage 4, you're going into stage 4, you're looking at, well, when am I going to get on dialysis?
Exactly.
And this was about a 10, 12-year journey of the pharmaceuticals destroying my kidneys. So I understand how our pharmaceuticals are, as my pharmacist friends in the military have told me, they are a bridge until you can find what works. And for me, diet, exercise, cannabis works. And
that's pretty much how most pharmaceuticals should be. We shouldn't be on them for a long time, right? Because we see side effects, we see dysregulation of our endocannabinoid system. Polypharmacy causes a drug nutrient depletion. And so, we're not anti-pharma, However, it's instead of responsible use of cannabis, it's more along the lines of responsible use of pharmaceuticals. Really?
Yeah,
because they're
and
pill and procedure happy, right? You think they're just dishing out pills and procedures way too.
well, they're starting to look at other options because we have over 350 critically short medications that my friend Colonel Suarez is advocating to help resolve the medication shortage. And cannabis can be part of that solution.
Correct. Cannabinoids are great facilitators of root cause healing for sure. Yeah, very powerful. So how let's dive into your love story with Shelly and talk about what happened.
So Shelly saw me on January 6th of 2020, and she told her friend that she was interested in me. And her friend said, well, he's married. Well, 10 days later, my second wife, under the guise of having a date night, which I was very excited because we hadn't had a date night in forever, told me she wanted a divorce. And the board of normal, so I left. I went to my friend Jack's house, and that's when I did the Indiana State Nurses Association. We did a federal cannabis debate, the first one in the nation, according to Neil Smith, that you could find out through Normal. So we were doing cutting edge things in Indiana for advocacy, and Normal wanted to bring Shelly into the state fold. And me going through the divorce, having my second wife kick me out, was one of the biggest blessings of my life. I was depressed. I knew I had to get stuff done that I had started. So I finished up. I went to my dad's. I went to Jeff Staker's, and Jeff Staker, he's the founder of Hoosier Vets for Medical Cannabis. And I went to see Shelly for Indiana Normal to see if we could connect. And we did a podcast thing, a video that we put out there. And Jeff, when I got back, Jeff's like, she likes you. I said, no. I had to watch it like 3 times. And Jeff's like, she flicks her hair and the way she smiles, and then she touches your shoulder. Oh. And she said, I'm like, maybe. And over the next, 6 weeks or so, we had really bad weather. We were trying to have the grassroots get up and going, and we had a meeting, and there was a blizzard. Like, I told Jeff, I said, nobody's coming to this. And almost nobody did. But Jeff had talked to April, Shelly's friend, and he knew she was coming. And so I went to the bathroom, Jeff's like, hey, watch Jason when Shelly walks in. Because I'd already told him, I said, if she comes, that means that she's coming here to see me. She's not coming for a cannabis grassroots movement thing, an hour and a half in the snow that you shouldn't be driving in. So she showed up, and I just lit up, and everybody knew it. It was just kind of, we started working together. I helped her with her company, the Hempin Nurse. I learned a lot. She had so many patients. Her compassion was incredible. She, every time she started getting some profits, she started giving everything away. So I had to find ways to reduce the cost. And I found ways to reduce costs so Shelly could love on people. And a lot of them were terminal cancer patients. She had a glioblastoma patient she put into remission twice. She had a stage 4 lung cancer that they told him 2 to 4 weeks. 18 months later, when Shelly got sick and couldn't get him product, that's when he died. It's because he couldn't get her product. But he lived so much longer. And Shelly and I saw Shelly needed things. And I knew that we were good together. I kept asking her if she would marry me. And then one day she just said, yeah, let's get married. We'll go down to the courthouse. So we went down and got married. And she and her friends told me she blossomed. Like, she was an advocate, but she was a little timid. she wouldn't like get out there. She didn't have that spark, that fire. But they said, oh my gosh, when she met you, and you're a nurse and you have more experience than she does, and you've been in the cannabis advocacy as long, but you're working at the state level. She's working at the level. She, like, her dad was on her all the time. You got to get out of this. You're not going anywhere. And so that kind of held her back and made her timid. But when she said, Dad, I'm married to the chair of Indiana Normal, and he's a retired captain. Her dad's like, didn't know what to say.
What could he say?
Yeah. And I remember I got home. Well, I got to his house, to her dad's house, and Shelly and I were out advocating, holding up her legalize it sign. And her dad said, why the hell are you letting her do that? She's going to get arrested. You need to stop her. And I looked at him and said, have you ever been able to stop Shelly? He kind of said, and he said, no. I said,
there you go.
No, you're either with her or you're against her. And,
right.
And she's not stopping.
And you guys have done some beautiful work together, healing green with Jason and Shelly, which I'm going to share a little bit later on. So what happened? Should we bring up those slides? You want to tell the story?
Sure. So Shelly's on the left side of the screen, and that's when she was going in. I believe she might have been getting blood or a procedure. My mom in 97 is there in the middle. That was right before she died of breast cancer. So Shelly had stage 4 cervical cancer. My mom had breast cancer, died when I was in my early 20s. And then there's a picture of me with the recognition from the Nurses on Board Council. But Shelly, when Shelly got cancer, she was devastated. Like, she just wanted to give up. I told her, I said, no, God has a plan and a journey for you to tell. And we're going to reach out to everybody I know, the people in Europe, the people in Japan, the people here in Indiana. I reached out to everybody I could think of that I talked about research with cannabis and cancer through the years. And we came up with a plan, and we executed that plan to what Shelly wanted. There were things she didn't like. And Dr. Varula, her best friend, who she trained in cannabinoid medicine, he came up with the supplements for Shelly. This is what you have to do to protect. And she didn't have any problems with her kidneys, didn't have any problems with her liver or her heart. Her hair actually came in thicker on chemo. Keith Johnson gave her on turkey tail mushrooms and CBG and CBD. Her cancer between her first scan and her second scan in 2 weeks shrunk by 8% on just what we were doing at home. And that's where we started with this whole journey, and that she just was devastated because her dad just died 2 months before stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
So basically, she started on a journey of using conventional care and cannabinoids to treat her cancer.
Yes.
Right. And she was actually doing well.
She did amazing. So what ended up happening is after the chemo, after the radiation, they said they couldn't find any active cancer. There was a necrotic walnut-sized tumor left, or mass, and so the tumor originally was the size of a 12-ounce Coke can.
Oh wow!
So it was huge, and she had a small tumor in her leg, and then one right outside of the uterus cavity. That ultimately the tumor and the swollen lymph node blocked off her blood vessels, which caused her to have a 3-foot-long blood clot thrombus in her leg from her hip into her calf. She did, and they didn't listen to us for 3 weeks. Shelly was telling them, I'm hurting, there's something wrong. Cannabis isn't helping, but cannabis helped all my other pain. And they wouldn't give her pain meds, opioids to help. They're like, well, just keep an eye on it. finally she couldn't lay down for her radiation therapy, and the oncology radiologist like, well, we've got to be able to do this. You need to go and get a scan done. They were so short-staffed here in Michigan, they didn't have an ultrasound tech until 2 days later. So we had to wait until Saturday to get in. So she missed a radiation therapy because they refused to believe us. And I'm thinking, we're both critical care nurses. I was critical care certified. She was ICU nurse, and I used to train doctors.
Right.
And they wouldn't believe us about the blood clot, which was caused from the compression, because you have to have blood flow to prevent blood clots. And so that was our first like major hiccup. Everything else went great. I mean, as far as chemo and radiation go, Shelly had a little nausea, but that was more from the pain from the blood clot than from the therapy. She was on 5 different anti-nausea class medications, one of them being Marinol. So that's where we started. And in July, she started advocating again. She felt good enough to get out and go to the Lansing, Michigan, and there with the weedsters and the patient care growers, and tell them the miraculous success she had by combining cannabis, mushrooms, supplements, and conventional chemo and radiation therapy. She had beat cancer. That was her journey. That was her cancer cannabis journey. It was a success. We were so happy. And she was overjoyed. You had her smile, and I mean, she had her down days, but then it changed. What's the next slide that we have on Shelly? And
yeah, let's see what we got going on here. So we're going to talk about, this is a presentation that you're going to be doing in the future, but here is Shelly, right?
Yeah, that was her favorite thing to do down in the garden, was smelling her colas.
Yeah. So want me to keep flipping through? Yeah.
Yeah.
We can get to. So this is current legal federal state cannabis products. Let's get into, here's another one of Shelly in the garden. What are cannabis medication treatments? Dispensaries. There's Shelly. Is this an edible that she made?
That's an edible I designed for her. And so she made the gummies, I made the chocolates. And but that was her medicine right there that I especially made for her when I did the research.
What's in that? What's in that chocolate right there for her?
So there's maca root, cinnamon, ginger, turmeric. I put cayenne pepper, and then it was dark chocolate along with so 60 chocolates took 4.5 milliliters of RSO. So each chocolate had somewhere between 50 to 100 milligrams of THC. At one point, she was eating up to 3 or 4 of those to control her symptoms. Normally one was sufficient. Sometimes she'd do a half if she wanted to work during the day.
Yep. Got to cut it in half. Yep. Just so you can function and control the psychoactivity.
And we actually put the recipes up on Healing Green with Jason and Shelly of the basic. Before we had the cancer, I created them for her sleep, and so she could actually get some rest through the night before she got sick. And
for the viewers, if you look in the comments, I put out their page. So Healing with Jason and Shelly, Healing Green with Jason and Shelly. So what's going on here? Barriers to cannabis patients, denial of FDA medication, Marinol.
Yeah, so in 2022, I was in Michigan taking care of the plants and the chickens. She was in Indiana and our grandson was with his dad, and Shelly got sick. She lived lifelong with chronic cyclic nausea and vomiting syndrome. So once it happens, nothing stops it. She has to go and get fluids and electrolytes. Once that happens, then she has to come back home and use her marijuana to finish it up so she doesn't get back into that cycle. Marijuana was what kept her healthy. And so what happened was she went in to the ED and they said, we want to admit you as an observation patient because this was, your labs were significant. We want to make sure that you're trending in the right direction. Shelly didn't want to stay, but she listened to him because I wasn't there to help her. And what ended up happening was she started getting sicker and sicker. They were giving her fluids. They were giving her 60 to 80 milliequivalents of potassium through IVs, and the IVs were blowing. As you can see, there's 2 IVs in that spot, and they blew. The one at the top was one of the IVs, and then you can see where the big one was, and they just kept infiltrating. Her arms and hands were all bruised up now, and this is about 3 or 4 days after, because we didn't think about taking pictures right away because her arms looked horrible. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody with that bad of potassium burns in their veins.
And she didn't have a portacath?
No, she was healthy, so she didn't have a portacath. This is before the cancer in 2022.
Oh, okay. Well, this is story number one. Okay.
She told him, she said, just give me Marinol. I'm prescribed Marinol. It's in my record. I have a script, but I'm out. And they're like, no, our chief executive officer of Lutheran Hospital Systems doesn't like it. And she's like, well, is he a medical doctor? And go, oh, no, he's an administrator. And she's like, I need this. And they got to the point that they were considering, her levels got so bad and her blood pressure and heart rate were so abnormal. They were looking at taking her to the ICU. She went from an observational patient, and within 36 hours, she was looking at critical care and putting in lines, and she called me and she said, they're going to move me to the ICU. I'm doing really bad. What do I do? I said, and she said, they won't give me Marinol. I said, well, call Dr. Varula. So she called Dr. Varula, sent me to, he sent a script. I drove 2 hours down to the pharmacy, and I fought with them for 2 hours. They did not want to give me Marinol for her. First, they said, well, we don't have it. I said, check your refrigerator. It's kept in the refrigerator. Oh, there it is. Oh, but we only have a half dose. So we only have half the pills. I said, that's okay. I'll take half.
Right.
They said, oh, no, we can't do that without a new doctor's order. So I said, okay, I got the doctor's personal number. I'll call them and have them call you. What number do you, I started to dial, and the pharmacist came out and said, no, we can fill it. I'm like, okay. And then they said my government insurance wasn't working. Well, the problem was Shelly hadn't changed her name. Yeah.
Oh, she got married. Changed her name.
Yeah, because they required the Social Security number, the change a name. They wouldn't accept the marriage certificate. So that was having to do with COVID. But the problem was it was just barrier after barrier. It took me 2 hours to get the medication. I went over, gave Shelly 2 5-milligram tabs of Marinol. And about 5-10 minutes later, the nurse walks in with some Marinol and said, they said, well, they've decided to try the Marinol since you've been on it. And the doctor's taking responsibility. And she looks at me like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I said, take it, honey. She took it. So she said, I've never had more than 10 milligrams of Marinol at a time. Within a half hour, 45 minutes, she's up walking around, felt great, wanted to eat. And as soon as because they've been trying to get her to eat the whole time, she had a full diet. And as soon as she could eat, they made her NPO and said, nope, can't have anything. We want to see what happens. I'm like, the whole point of giving her the Marinol is so she could eat, so she could reduce electrolytes and hydration herself. And
so they wanted. So what were they trying? What were they looking for?
I don't know what they were looking for.
Because I'm trying to critically think this one through. I can't. I've been an ICU nurse too for 10 years, so way back in the day. So I'm like, why would you?
They just said, we just want to wait and see how things settle. And I'm like, so within 16 hours, she was walking. She could have walked out. She did like 20 laps around the unit.
Yeah.
Because she just couldn't sit down. She was so energized. She's like, it's like, whoop. It's like I had medicine just woo, and I just was in bliss. And
her endocannabinoid system was trying to autocorrect and self-correct and giving her the energy that she needed.
Her heart rate went back to normal. Her blood pressure went back to normal. All of her electrolytes went back to normal. They couldn't explain it. They're like, we don't know. And Shelly's like, well, here's some pamphlets. I got one on the endocannabinoid system, one on endocannabinoid deficiencies. And she sent them a really nice basket of flowers. But this one tech, when they discharged her, 16 hours after giving her Marinol, she's being discharged. And the tech was pushing her out. And I went to go get the vehicle. And Shelly said, the tech said, I have the entire hospital talking. Everybody, the administrators, the doctors, the nursing staff, they said they've never seen anything like this in their entire life. Everything they did failed. And then they tried Marinol, and it was complete reversal. Everything was great and normal.
Wow. I'm blown away. Like, no, I'm not blown away. Actually, that's the endocannabinoid system.
Well, I'm blown away that they didn't treat her.
I'm blown away that they didn't treat her either. And it's just, for me in particular, with working with helping consumers get their cannabis into hospitals. I've done this a couple of times when I was back in Boston, and having that education with the staff is you would not take away insulin from a diabetic. So if you're taking away cannabinoids from this patient that wants to come in and get help from a condition, it's the same as you're taking away insulin from a diabetic. This is her lifeline. This is the glue that's keeping her together. And so, gosh,
almost killed her.
Yeah, almost killed her. Man. Yeah, so here it is. Barriers to cannabis. Drove 2 hours to Michigan to get outpatient pharmacy, Marinol script for her, primary physician, since they refused to administer. And then here she got her Marinol.
Yep.
Wow.
And those are the brochures she gave them.
Those are the brochures she gave out to them. She educated the staff. And that's just, yeah. So barriers, go ahead. I'll let you talk about this one.
So after this near-death experience for Shelly, I was pissed. I'm like, I got to know where I can take her. So, we already knew Lutherans said no. It was against their policy from an administrator, not for medical or research reasons. IU refused to answer us. St. Vincent's hospitals refused to answer us. Parkview responded back, and they said that they would allow a doctor to do it if they believed it would help the patient. And Goshen gave her Marinol because she had a script on the outside. So they're like, well, why would we stop it? If somebody's on this and they have medical reasons to have it, we're not going to stop a medication. That's just crazy to us. Yeah. So we knew that we could go to Goshen and Parkview. And we did go to Goshen when she had cancer. It's important to know which hospitals are friendly to patients and their care and which ones are not. And now up in Michigan here, Borges and Bronson both would give Marinol. So there was, that's an FDA drug. So they allow that. I think the next slide might talk about what the ER visit that Shelly had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from food poisoning. This happened, I think later in 2022. So what happened was Shelly and I shared a meal. We were on the road and in a hurry, so we got something from Long John Silver's, and we ate, and we both were like, looked at each other and like, oh, I don't feel good. And she didn't feel good. I got home, I took my Zofran. Shelly took some Zofran. But once Shelly's on that route, you're not stopping it until you get the fluids and electrolytes change, because she started throwing up. And so I drove her to the hospital here in Paw Paw. And we told them what happened. They said, I got sick. I went home, took my Zofran. I'm fine now. We had a bad meal. I believe we had food poisoning. Shelly was the one who needed care. So they ended up diagnosing her as with cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. And they said that she was, cannabis use disorder.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So here's somebody prescribed Marinol, has a medical marijuana card supervised by a doctor in the state of Michigan, and the hospital, without even really thinking. And they put her on a protocol for cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. They gave her Haldol.
Oh, my goodness.
The Haldol, they do ultra low doses, so you don't have the effect like that 50-50, like you go crazy or you don't. They give you just a taste of it, and that actually took care of her nausea, but that would take care of any nausea. It's not just cannabis hyperemesis. And they gave her fluids and electrolytes, but they refused to look into the food poisoning. So they sent her home. She still was having problems because they didn't fully address the food poisoning, which they didn't test to see if she needed antibiotics. So she went back the next day, still throwing up. They give her some more fluids, replace her electrolytes. She comes home, and then she starts smoking marijuana, eating some edibles, and then she felt better. And the whole point that we wrote them and we told them there's we said, your staff said they can't learn about the endocannabinoid system because there's no legal treatments. I said, first off, I wrote this all up about Marinol. It's a Schedule 3 pharmaceutical. It's THC. I said, then you got Epidiolex, which was 2018. Marinol was 1985 when it was approved. I said, you have the Investigative New Drug Program from 1976 that the Department of Justice settled with these patients. I said, so there is federally legal medical marijuana patients since 1978. Yep. I said, yes. You can't say
Robert Randall was the first one, and Robert Randall took the government and won.
Yep. Well, he won the first time, he won the second time, and he was going to the Supreme Court. If he would have gone to the Supreme Court and won, then it would have been legal for all of us. Department of Justice knew this.
Oh, so I didn't know that.
They gave him a deal. They said, we will give you free marijuana for life every month, and you cannot be prosecuted while you're on this anywhere in the United States if you drop your lawsuit going to the Supreme Court. Or if you agree not. Yeah.
Okay, I just want you to repeat this for our viewers because I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So if Robert Randall took cannabis, went to Supreme Court and won, that means cannabis would have been federally legal for everyone.
Correct. To use as medicine. But the Department of Justice is very sneaky. They do it in such a way that it's like bribing somebody. They're like, well, you can lose, and then you wouldn't have your medicine. We'll give it to you for free, and you can never be prosecuted. That's how the program got started.
Wow. You know what? I just learned something today, and I thought I knew a lot. Thank you. Wow. That's mind-blowing. I've
had some great cannabis mentors who have been there since the 70s. And recently, Neil Smith, he traveled around with Jack Hare for a while. And so he knows people. This is the part that ultimately ended in Shelly's demise was the vascular.
Jason, when did she die? When did she die for our viewers?
January 18th of this year. Okay. So what happened was vascular team did an amazing job at Borges. They have phenomenal vascular surgeons. They put a stent in. They removed the blood clot. She felt great. And that was, I think, in end of May, middle of June, somewhere in that time frame, May, June. And then what ended up happening was the hospital gave her I can't remember the name of the blood thinner. They gave her a blood thinner, but we talked about it because we didn't do Coumadin.
Coumadin?
We
Heparin?
we didn't do heparin or Coumadin. We didn't do Lovenox. It was a pill, one of the newer ones that they don't have a reversal agent for yet. I think they're starting to develop those. But so she was on a blood thinner, and she had an appointment to go back to the vascular surgeon before the blood thinners ended. She had a few days left after that appointment of blood thinners, and we told the vascular surgeon. They said, "Look, we'd like you to renew her blood thinners. You're the vascular surgeon. You did this." And what ended up happening is he said no. He said, "Your oncologist in 2 weeks can give you the blood thinners." I said, "She doesn't have 2 weeks of blood thinners." He goes, "Well, oh well, figure it out." And so 3 days after she ran out of blood thinners, we're back in the hospital. She had diffuse clots in her calf, and we went to Goshen, and they put her on a heparin drip and treated her, and she got better, and we got compression stockings. They put her back on blood thinners, and we got into the oncologist. The oncologist said, "Well, this is what the vascular team is supposed to be doing," because Shelly had an artery inside of her cervix uterus that was oozing. So the oncologist wasn't comfortable managing the blood thinners because it was too complex. Shelly had a very narrow window of therapeutic range, and we had gone in for the bleeding at one point, and the ER doctor I can't touch that, and they wanted me to drive her to the trauma center when she could have bled out at any point. I said, if I had a team and I didn't have to drive and I had my equipment, I would more than be willing to take her. But I said, one thing, she's got an IV in, that has to come out, and Shelly's a tough stick. Wow. And I said, because I know it's illegal to leave the hospital with an IV.
Right.
And I know her condition. I don't have blood. I don't have anything to help her. And it would only be me driving. I said, you're going to take her in an ambulance. So they called the oncologist. The oncologist walked them through what they could do with the limited resources they have. They transferred her to the women's hospital. And when we got there, they looked at her and they said, "Oh, we got to transfer you over to Borges because they're the only ones with the vascular team." They said, "If she bleeds out, she's going to die here." And I'm just thinking, you're where all the critical OBGYN patients come. And you don't have I'm thinking they don't have a vascular team. So they said, never come back here. So Shelly was a very complex patient. And I was essentially her patient care manager. I created a plan and a history and the contacts, and the doctors are like, who are you? How do you know this? I'm like, well, I'm a retired Air Force trauma nurse. I was the nurse night supervisor. I mean, I solved the problems. When the doctors couldn't figure it out, they came to me. That's just how it was. And so I took care of Shelly. And when they got her there, they stopped the bleeding by packing it. And we got her back home, and we adjusted her blood thinners again. And we had problems with the pharmacy. We had problems with the insurance company with getting her blood thinners. They said it was too expensive. She shouldn't be on it. And so the last time she was in the hospital for her blood clots in Michigan, they said, well, we can try one more thing. They did one more procedure in December, I think end of November, December, somewhere in there. I had to look back at the records. But what happened was they failed. And we had talked about this before the surgery. They were going to bore through it. And when I got out, the vascular surgeon said, well, we weren't able to get through it. I tried to use the little tweezer stuff. The stent was completely occluded. And he said, but I could bore through it. We can get through this. We can open it just like we do for heart attacks, and take him into angio and bore through the clot. I'm like, I thought that's what we're doing now.
Right.
And so after that, we went and she had a filter placed in that for blood clots.
IVC filter?
Yep. And they did that in the office at the vascular team. I started asking questions. He said, nope, we're done. You're out, gone. Don't come back.
Wow.
And Shelly wasn't under when they did the procedure.
Oh,
He said it was the most horrible thing she had ever gone through. And Shelly's been through some pretty nasty surgeries because they just started shoving it in her neck. And she's like, I'm not done. But they found out, like the chief vascular surgeon who did her initial surgery, when they found out that she was a medical cannabis patient, then we started having problems. They didn't say it, but the attitude completely changed. And we ended up going to Goshen and South Bend vascular teams to see if they would work on Shelly. They said, nope, you got to go back to where she originally had her stuff done because they're responsible. We're not touching it because they didn't want the lawsuit. Now, I started looking around. Like, I know colonels that run hospitals, run units, and I could have gotten Shelly the best care that anybody could have gotten for the blood clot. Problem is, on a military base, you're not getting cannabis products on there. Still federally illegal, still Schedule 1. Doesn't even matter if you're in a legal state. It's not happening. So I had to look at that, and I had to look at what kind of support we had. Her brother was a radiology tech down in Louisiana, and the hospital down there was associated with MD Anderson, one of the best cancer hospitals in the entire world. So we went down there, and that was in December. This started in October. That was December. And essentially, by the time they were getting on board and wrapped their heads around how complex she was and what she needed, she was dying on the table, and they were still asking me, do you want to proceed? Because if we didn't proceed, she probably would have died within 24 to 48 hours. But we got a peg tube in. We got her back for about 10 days. And they didn't follow the national refeeding guidelines. And I used to do that in the military.
I used to do that too. Home infusion, when you're starting someone that can't eat, you don't go from 0 to a turkey dinner.
Yeah, and that's what they tried to do. I told them, I said, I want you to do 10 mils an hour for 12 to 24 hours. Check the residuals every 4. If she tolerates it, then go to 20 mils the next 12 to 24 hours, and then 30, and then 40, and then you start doing the boluses. You back it back down, and you start doing little boluses in between the trickle feed. And they just went 4 hours, 10 mils an hour, and then they did a full bolus on her. And it shut her gut down.
Yeah.
And so
explain to our viewers what refeeding syndrome is, just so that for the people that don't know.
So
it's critical.
Jeff Staker explained it best to me when he said, when the American troops went into the Nazi concentration camps and people had been starved for months and they were skin and bones, if the Americans thought they were doing good by giving them all their food and letting them eat as much as they want. Well, what happens is your gut is shut down. It doesn't move. So essentially, when you eat that food, what you're doing is you're pulling the rest of the electrolytes in the water into the gut. The gut isn't moving. It's not absorbing stuff. And you create a blockage. It shuts the gut down, and you die.
Electrolyte abnormalities, cardiovascular complications, dehydration. It's, your body kind of goes into shock.
Well, it's already in shock. You just push it over the edge and causes death. Yeah, you're in shock. They thought they were doing good, but it seems like torture bringing somebody back from, who's starving. who, I mean, literally starving, not, oh, I'm hungry feeling, but Shelly literally had a teaspoon to a tablespoon of food a day for 3 months.
Wow.
And we, we might have been able to get her back. But when I got her home finally, and we thought we were heading in the right direction, then, she started having bigger and bigger residuals. And about 2.5 days before she died, I called hospice because I knew it was done. When you can't get the gut back, then you're done. And I just made her comfortable. Louisiana is incredible. They actually have a cannabis physician that's integrated with the oncology center. So if you want to use cannabis in Louisiana legally, they have a system for that. She didn't have a chance to do that, but they told us go ahead and give her medicine because she needs it. She's been on it, and it's okay. And so we treated Shelly with her fecal oil, with her CBD, her CBG, and the mushrooms. And when we got to the hospice, we just eliminated everything but the anti-nausea meds and the cannabis. And she was on fentanyl patches, and we had a hard time getting even. I remember the first time she came out and they ordered Marinol at the pharmacy in Paw Paw. She had sepsis. They wouldn't even allow her to have her antibiotics until they got the Marinol order straightened out. And we had to call the doctor, and the doctor called in from the hospital and yelled at him and said, "This person had sepsis. Get them their antibiotics. We'll straighten out the Marinol later." And because they asked, "Do you have Marinol?" I said, "Yes, we have Marinol." I said, "We need the antibiotics," and she just got out for sepsis. So they are even willing to hold cannabis. Well, because of a cannabis FDA drug, they're even willing to hold all your other treatments sometimes that is life-saving, such as antibiotics after sepsis discharge from the hospital.
Yeah. Wow. Jason, you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot. This is your mom. Barriers to cannabis, patients discussion. While we're looking at this here, tell me what you're doing now.
So I'm still dealing with Shelly's estate, trying to get the house ready. And I have people reaching out to me. So I still post stuff. I had cancer patients talking to me yesterday about what do I do? It starts out, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss to Shelly. She was so wonderful. She gave me free product. She was helping me." And I said, "Well, what do you need? Where are you in your treatment?" And so I'm helping patients like Shelly did. Shelly had a knack for it. She was better at it than I was. I just gave her the research. I was the guy. I tried to be the guy in the background providing the support and let her do her thing, but she would always push me out front and be behind me to support me. But that's what I'm doing, is trying to send people hemp CBD. Like she had a family member that their kid is having seizures, so I'm providing CBD. She had a friend who's an ICU nurse. Her husband has severe diabetes. The only thing that worked was Shelly's CBD. And so I sent them some product. And the company is no longer around because they had to shut it down last year when Shelly just got so sick. But I'm trying to still do what I can.
Do her work. Yes.
Do her work, but I couldn't run the company myself. It literally took, it was too much for me and Shelly a lot of times with the busy lives we had. So it really needed. She had 3 of us at one point. She had a medical assistant who was phenomenal, but I'm advocating. I went.
We have a comment from one of the viewers says, it sounds like hospital administrators need mandatory cannabis training. So let's talk about scheduling, right? That will happen at some point in time. And one of my questions to you too is, as a health professional for 30 years, what concerns do you have for medical cannabis patients in our healthcare system?
Everything I just talked about with Shelly.
Yeah,
One,
exactly. Your story
is discrimination by doctors who they don't understand, or they have a personal bias for some reason. That's the number one thing, because they're the boots on the ground that can make or break you. Two is the administrators. They can't be dictating policy based on opinion or religious beliefs that they have. It has to be based on research and facts and the patient and the doctors, what they're all comfortable with. You don't force patients to take something. Like, I wanted Shelly to do hyperbarics. She refused because she said she had issues with her ears. She was claustrophobic. I'm like, we can deal with that. I said, let's get you in. That'll help. But she didn't want to do it, so we didn't do it. I mean, the patient is ultimately in charge. Three is pharmacies fighting you to get the medication, Marinol, Epidiolex, whatever cannabinoid it is. And then the insurance, getting them to pay for it. So you got administrators, providers, pharmacies, insurance, and then you got lawmakers. They ultimately decide what we can and can't have. And if the U.S. government, the legislators, pass a bill rescheduling marijuana as a Schedule III, they'll put it in the hands of the pharmaceutical companies and the researchers to study it, which from research, then you progress. Right. And they're not sure what's going to happen with the patient caregivers and the state programs if they move it to Schedule III. Is the government still going to allow them to do what they've been doing autonomously? Or is it going to be considered a Schedule III controlled substance that you can only have from a doctor's prescription? Yeah. So, you got future questions.
I'm all for descheduling. Deschedule. We have to deschedule. There can be multiple pathways. There can still be a pharmaceutical pathway. There can be the do-it-yourself pathway with, people growing their own. And you can have dispensaries for medicine, dispensaries for adult use, and just wellness. I think we need to have multiple paths, but I think that would happen more if we can deschedule it as opposed to rescheduling. For me, rescheduling is glass half full. I'm not going to say it's glass half empty, because it's half full, because it is recognizing cannabis as medicine. Schedule III is where Marinol sits today. And according to the American Cannabis Nurses Association, the therapeutic use of cannabis is the use of cannabis products for medicinal, wellness, and healing purposes. It is personal and individual to each consumer, with objective criteria being improvement in one of the 5 health domains: biological, spiritual, mental, emotional, and social, without negatively impacting any of the others. So adult use cannabis is actually therapeutic use of cannabis. So when we teach on that, you're either using cannabis appropriately or you're not. There's no in between. You're either doing it right or you're not. And if you're not, that's why we're here as nurses, right? You're doing amazing work, Jason. I want to be able to, as well as, how are we going to help the veterans with this? That's the other thing. You and I were talking, you're a veteran nurse and you've seen and experienced trauma. I'll tell you what, I know I was an ICU nurse for 10 years, and I know that I didn't process a lot of what I saw until COVID hit. And that's when a lot of my trauma came up, and so how are we going to take care of, not only just the veterans that are in combat, but also the clinicians that are taking care of the veterans in combat that are coming back and having to put them back together?
Well, and the veterans are working on it. When the government doesn't perform as they should. Veterans have suffered and sacrificed enough that they're like, I'm going to find my own way. And I can tell you, as a retired nurse and the former chair of Indiana Normal, when I'd walk into a post, doesn't matter which, AMVETS, DAV, Legion, VFW, I can tell you within about 30 minutes of sitting at the bar, because veterans are like, well, who are you? What do you do? And once they find out you're a nurse, then they start asking questions, because you automatically have this respect. They're like, oh, you're the person that's saving my life. First I was a combat medic, and then I was a trauma nurse in the Air Force and CCAT. So I saw it from the front line all the way back to the hospital, the whole range. I did all of it at every level in the military. And they ask questions, and then they always kind of have this like, well, what do you think about cannabis or marijuana? I said, well, you're talking to the right person. At that time I was the vice chair of Indiana Normal. And I told them, hey, I advocate for it. It's like, oh, you do? Hey, we got this guy who grows. If you need some, I can get you. I said, no, either I didn't use or I got my own source, and I'm in Michigan. So I'm good. Like, oh, you're in Michigan? I said, yeah, I'm coming down here for a cannabis education event. And so the veterans do it. Now, Rex Powers has reached out to me, and we're talking about what Dr. Sue Sicily is doing with Post 426, the American Legion Post in Montana. I think they call it Blue Sky. It's the first virtual post, American Legion Post in the country. And then the unique thing is Dr. Sue Sicily does research with veterans and PTSD using cannabis. So she was sponsoring the post, and it's pro-cannabis post. Colonel Scalise, which a lot he's been advocating, but he's stepping down as the commander, and they've reached out to me to kind of get feelers of, well, do you want to be commander? Can we do this? We really like that you're a nurse. And then we start talking about, well, I'm also looking at applying for the American Cannabis Nurses Association board. So it fits in perfectly that, if I get on to both of these positions, I'm stuck right in the middle with all the resources around me to just tie everybody together so that the nurses can help the veterans can support the cannabis nurses, and Dr. Sue Sicily is involved. So you got the physicians network that she's with. It's synergistic. And then Rex Powers, he's worked with with Focus, with policies, procedures, and standards of cannabis use, and throughout the entire system, from like seed to sale, of how do you grow it right, how do you keep it safe, and how do you get it sold and maintain it. I mean, he's been in this for over a decade, and so there's exciting things that are happening behind the scene. And even if I wasn't in it, it would eventually happen.
Yes, but I think you being part of it is going to just make it even better, and also carrying on the work of Shelly, becoming part of the American Cannabis Nurses Association, running for the board position, be able to tying this together. As you know, maybe some of our viewers don't, but the American Nurses Association, which represents 5 million nurses, just recognized cannabis nursing as a specialty, meaning that nurses are going to be able to sit and get board certified in cannabis as a specialty. That's very, very powerful. And what just came out, published hot off the press, literally 10 days ago, is the scope and standards of practice. So the scope and standards of practice is the who, what, when, where, and why nurses of why we're doing what we're doing as we work with cannabis consumers. And it sets the standard for those that are registered nurses, master prepared, and advanced practice nurses. So really, really exciting times. And so I know the American Cannabis Nurses Association will be welcoming you with open arms. So really excited to see your application come forth. for sure. And so for the new people that are out there, I just want to share your page and where people can find you, because you are a wealth of information. You know, I see you all over LinkedIn sharing things, and on Facebook and in your group. I just want to share your page because why not? This is your Facebook page. It's in, here we go, Healing with Jason and Shelly. Look at that great picture there.
Well, that picture actually is from WJOB, which was a veteran-run media that covers Chicago, and they've had me and Shelly and Jeff Staker, I think Will Henry, on, and we were the medical experts that we were talking about whatever cannabis legislation was going on that year, and so.
There you are. Yeah, no, this is great. You have oh, there we go. Can you see that picture right there?
Yeah, Shelly was so happy. She was thrilled to be on that show. WJOB does a wonderful job advocating for veterans. They've always opened up a couple times a year to cannabis veteran advocates to interview them. So wonderful shout out to that great group of guys.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, Jason, we've come to the end of our time. This show is dedicated to Shelly Brewer, the Hempin nurse. Thank you so much for being on, for being open, for being vulnerable, for sharing your tender heart with our viewers. We really appreciate it. And remember, everyone, what it's all about. It's truly about living your best life and helping others do the same. I'm going to end with my favorite video. This one always brings me to tears as well, because it truly is about helping others.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered the cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.